could you sort of succinctly state, why is it different to think about either what we're doing, preaching on the radio and on the internet? Why is it different than standing up in a pulpit live with a congregation?
I think a couple of things. One is, as I talk about this stuff with students and pastors and even congregants, sometimes there's a pushback like that's not really church. Church is only happens when like we're there physically together. Almost like, online church or hybrid church is mediated in a way that face-to-face preaching is not mediated. And I think that is a false assumption. Like proclamation is always mediated. It's mediated through the scriptures, through the lived experiences of the writers and the way the Spirit was working in their lives. It's mediated through amplification devices like microphones that we use. So I'm really helping my students to think critically about what does it mean to be digital preachers in this age where we're competing with, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube shorts, and how do we move away from this very performative sense that, like we might want to remove all of the ums and uhs in our sermons, or we might, like I've talked to preachers who it takes them 3 or 4 hours to do their sermon because every time they mess up, they want to start over again.
Oh, goodness.
I think we can begin to develop a different kind of ecclesiology around these new forms of mediation. My friend Casey Sigmund, who teaches homiletics at St. Paul School of Theology, has written a great book called Engaging the Gadfly, where she asks a lot of really good questions about what does it mean to be in these hybrid online preaching contexts, and how do we foster a sense of togetherness and a sense of like unity, even when we're distanced from one another.
Yep.
This recording for day one is very similar. Like I'm preaching right now in January. I know that this will not be posted until the second week of Lent. The world can change tremendously from there. So just a little signaling of saying something like, as I'm preaching this sermon, like what that is signaling is that other people are going to engage this beyond, the time I'm recording it. So just being aware of that and naming it can help people who are not live still feel included in the preaching moment.
Yep, absolutely. And it also brings up that, throughout human history broadly, and talking about communication and the printed word, but also through Christianity, there have always been moments of crisis. Like, what is this really preaching? Like was it when St. Augustine's sermons were like printed on paper? It was like a little church crisis. Like, wait, is it okay for people to read a sermon? Is that the same? Should we allow it? I think, and then, Puritan times in early America, there was a issue then. Some of the same issues, and then we think a lot of having our 80th anniversary. The founders of then the Protestant Hour, they came together. They're very proud of themselves that it was ecumenical, that the Methodists were going to collaborate with the Lutherans and the Presbyterians, Episcopals. But they were aware, like, okay, well, there's this new thing, and we are going to use it for the purpose of evangelism. But then they discovered there's this like intimacy, like people feel very close, especially when it's audio. Like the incredible. It's a different kind of connection, but it is a human connection. And like you said, it's always mediated. So what do we make of the kind of closeness that we can feel with a recording, a video or an audio of someone else? What do we make about that parasocial relationship? Is it real? Is it fake? What theologically do we make of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I've really been guided by our mentor, Tom Long. He really fell in love with preaching when he was a radio DJ listening to these sermons. And he stumbled across the preaching of Edmund Steinley, this Lutheran pastor, who like opened up what preaching could look like for Tom. And I think like that's a really great testimony to how
It is.
we kind of engage, we do the same thing. Like when someone, a YouTube person that we really like or a TikTok personality, we feel like they're speaking directly to us. And it's almost like we forget the mediation is taking place because they have the ability just to kind of like reach through the camera and the microphone to grab us and hold our attention. And the challenge is that I think our formation in seminary as pastors kind of leads us into certain ways of thinking. And so we think like, okay, well, I preach a 20-minute sermon in my church. I'll just preach a 20-minute sermon online. And maybe that works, but it's not what people are used to consuming when they consume media in their daily lives. And there's just the basic elements of technical production. Like if the audio is bad, if the lighting is bad, if the camera is blurry, we're asking way too much of our technologically savvy audience to engage us just because we happen to be preaching sermons, right? So there's some technical skills that we need to develop as preachers, but I think just realizing that, if God can speak through a donkey, God can speak through my Canon R7 and my Shure microphone, right? God can do that, and it's beautiful.
Yep. It is indeed beautiful and weird. It's I think it is very okay for us to always be questioning it and like, okay, why? I mean, in our increasingly isolated time, wow, human isolation is just getting deeper and deeper and weirder, and kinds of media are all converging, and how we feel connected to people and to things on shows. And I was doing something really menial the other day, and I thought about what Stephen Colbert would say about what his mother says about how would this look in the light of eternity. And I was like, I don't know that man. I'd love to. We'd love to have him on day one. Oh my goodness. But but I also thought, when I was really little, I remember thinking I could talk to Mr. Rogers inside. I could have a little conversation with him. And I did grow out of that, but like that was the whole point, is he was talking to kids about feelings and how to feel and da-da-da-da. And anyway, my point is like, we hold the weirdness too of it, right? Like, and we it's not all good. It's complicated, and it's important to embrace all the complexity, which I think you're doing a great job of, Jake.
Oh, thanks. You're absolutely right. Mr. Rogers had that ability to speak in his very pastoral way to kids. I grew up on watching Mr. Rogers as well, and I think we can do the same thing. Like when I hear people talk about how they hate preaching into the camera. A lot of them, when they first started preaching, it's like all of a sudden it's like, what do I do with my hands? Do I like? I have hands now. What?
I didn't know I had hands before.
So there are techniques that you had to develop in order to remember, even if you feel weird with your body when you're preaching, it doesn't seem so weird to other people.
Right.
And something like just a little technical thing we learned, like in order to preach in a way that feels more compelling, I feel like we lose about 15 to 20% of the energy online. So we have to go a little bit bigger, a little louder, a little more intense, because when it's translated through that media, it's perceived at a level that actually hits where we want it to be. So much like if I'm preaching in a huge cathedral and there's an echo, I'm going to need to slow down my preaching.
Way down.
So that it doesn't sound like a goulash of sounds because of just the reverb and the acoustics of the room. So we've always been modulating. We've always been trying these things. And here we are again.
Here we are.